Blog Talk Radio.
Sleep, lay me down. I pray my soul is mine to keep. My soul can never step outside this bed, never into all the evil. Now back from the dead.
Are you scared?
He's here.
The calling hours.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
They will say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
Episode 79 of the Calling Hours Horror Podcast on Horror Society Radio. Once again, it is I, your head undertaker, the dead man Michael Jones of HorrorSociety.com and Living Dead magazine. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Once again, this month on the Calling Hours Horror Podcast, we are featuring the films that comprise the After Dark Horrorfest 8 Films to Die For. And on this episode, we are covering director Jeffery Scott Lando's Suspension. On to discuss the film this evening, we will have director-producer Jeffery Scott Lando, also of Savage Island, Goblin, and Roboshark. Writer Kevin Mosley, Savage Island, Section 8, and the upcoming Puppet Killer. Producer-actor Sage Brocklebank, also of Severed, Alien Tresspass, and Earth's Final Hours, as well as actress Ellen MacNevin, The Doll, and upcoming films Opus 35 and The Arrangement. In our digital dismemberment reviews for the evening, we will be covering Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of The Sentinel and Origin Releasing's DVD release of Thomas J. Churchill's Lazarus Apocalypse. In our Metal Massacre Spotlight, we will be featuring Metal Blade recording artist Rivers of Nihil and songs from the new CD, Monarchy. A little bit of background information. Of course, you know Rivers of Nihil began their musical journey in 2009 and recorded their first EP, Hierarchy. If you remember correctly, I recently featured their CD, The Conscious Seed of Light, which was done in 2012, and really enjoyed that. But topping their full-length debut is no elementary task. Terrorizer magazine declared that Rivers of Nihil managed to do something unashamedly modern and yet make death metal sound twisted and malevolent, while HeavyBlog.com simply noted that it was definitively one of the best debuts to come out this year. Guitarist Brody Utley cited recent personal hardships as a major factor in the creative process for Monarchy. Utley divulges that I lost a few close friends. the loss of these people had a profound influence on the creation of the music for this record. I was having strong feelings of rage, sadness, hope, and frustration as a result. The songs turned out heavier, darker, sadder, and more frightening than I had ever hoped that they would. The mood of this album and the song sequence reflects those emotions. Monarchy begins with the most heavy and darkest tracks and continues to develop more progressive leanings until the end, when Utley says the emotional tension completely falls apart. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the first song in our Metal Massacre Spotlight for the evening is from Rivers of Nihil. From the most recent album, Monarchy, the name of the song is Sand Baptism. Hell from their most recent CD, Monarchy. The name of the song was Sand Baptism. Make sure to listen in later on in the evening as we will feature them 2 more times in our Metal Massacre Spotlight. While you're listening to the show, make sure to head on over to metalblade.com, find out what's going on with their upcoming tour, pick up the CD, and band merchandise. In 20 minutes, we're going to have our feature interview with Jeffery Scott Lando, Kevin Mosley, Sage Brocklebank, and Ellen MacNevin from Suspension, one of the 8 films to die for from After Dark Horrorfest. But before that, it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for some digital dismemberment.
Digital dismemberment.
And in our first digital dismemberment spotlight for the evening, we are covering Origin Releasing's DVD release of Lazarus Apocalypse. And just to give a little bit of background info before we even start on that, this was a film made by fellow podcaster and soon-to-be, well, not even soon-to-be, already is movie maverick Thomas J. Churchill. I've had Thomas on before, twice actually. One time, unfortunately, was when Blog Talk Radio had the shits and cut out in the middle of our interview. So I'm looking forward to have Thomas on again very soon to talk more in depth about Lazarus Apocalypse and some of his other projects, including the most recently finished one, Checkpoint, which filmed here in North Carolina out Wilmington Way. For those of you that didn't know, of course, as I somewhat mentioned, Thomas is a multi-award-winning writer, producer, director, and radio host who is the head of Churchill Productions. Lazarus Apocalypse is highly entertaining. This is something that everyone needs to check out. Let me give you a little bit more background info on this film. Insurance investigator George Lazarus is tasked with interviewing 12 employees of the Deadly Sin Cigarette Company when his firm receives a suspicious insurance claim. He learns that all 12 had been let go after contracting mysterious illnesses. But before he can report back, Lazarus goes missing without a trace. After his disappearance, his heartsick fiancée Bethany and his friend Chip set out to find him, but what they uncover may actually be the beginning of the end for the entire human race. And just so you know, this film won Best Horror Feature at the 2014 New York City International Film Festival, as well as Best Makeup. So there's definitely a lot to like. There's definitely a lot to talk about with this film. One of the things I want to comment first and foremost about this film is it's kind of a precursor to George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. The film originally had 2 other titles, Hollywood Apocalypse, and it was also known as Lazarus, Day of the Living Dead. And it's supposed to be the first in a trilogy that will attempt to explain how the living dead came to be, and it basically leads into George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. One of the things that I really, really liked about this film, and I think that Thomas should be highly, highly thanked for, is his attention to detail. This is a period piece. The movie starts out in current times, but flashes back to 1957. When the film starts out, you see an FBI agent is questioning one Marion Crane, who's played by Krista Grote. And while the interview's going on, she's looking out into her yard, and you actually see a zombie eating a dog. It's almost like it's, an everyday occurrence. Meanwhile, her husband, who is played by Brian Andrews, is lying on his deathbed in the bedroom, and he's received his last rites from a priest. And during the interview, he mentions the year 1957. And one of the things that I really liked, this has a very film noir look to it. It switches back and forth between black and white and color. But one of the thing that I really wanted to compliment Thomas on was his attention to detail. There was not a single time while I was watching this movie that I noticed anything that was out of place. And maybe, I was just so enamored, but, the telephones were right. The clothing was right. The cars were right. Even the architecture for the buildings looked right. So all of those things are immediate positives that go into this film. You never once feel distracted by the shifts between the time periods or between black and white. Excuse me. So as you get into the black and white sequence of the film, it takes place in the Valley in Los Angeles, and this is about 11 years before Night of the Living Dead takes place. And you see a woman who, through flashbacks, you see appears to be a lounge singer, and you hear her overview of her suicide note, and she commits suicide by placing a plastic bag over her head. So the film starts off on a grim note to begin with. You can see that something strange is going on. Now, there's a young lady by the name of Bethany Loomis who works for George Lazarus. Bethany is played by Natalie Victoria. Lazarus is played by Ray Capuano. I hope I pronounced his name right. And they run an insurance company. Lazarus is investigating an incident that happened at the Deadly Sin cigarette company, and his company has to pay out $13 million, which is a ton of money back during that time period. Lazarus is trying to find out if there has been a fraud that's been committed and if everything is on the up and up. So there are different things that you see throughout the movie. Lazarus is going around trying to investigate and find out, how legitimate the $13 million claim is. The fun part for me was Thomas himself plays the owner of the Deadly Sin cigarette company, who also used to be a mafia member. Money is everything to him. One of the things that I really liked about his character was not only his name, which was Beelzebub, of course, but the way that he managed to mimic and maintain that 50s style of talking. It almost sounds like a joke in a lot of ways, but the way that the gangsters talked and the way people talked back then, Thomas really nails all of those elements. One of the things that I found really likable about the film as well is when it switches back and forth between color and black and white, a lot of the murder sequences are done in color, and it really, really helps to bring a visceral feel to the film. When there's one gentleman who falls into a machine, and it's just a bloody wash of gore. It just looked absolutely stunning on camera. There's another scene later in the film where a young man gets hit in the back of the head with a sledgehammer, and there's just a shower of blood and gore that erupts from his head. Another gentleman gets bitten by one of the zombies, and large chunks of flesh come out and blood. So the makeup really needs to be highlighted as a great visual effect in the film, and from everything that I saw, everything was practical. There was no distraction of CGI, at least none that caught my eye that took away from any elements of the film. I thought the film was extremely well acted. Everyone in the cast and crew really came across like they belonged and that they did their homework. There's one incredibly beautiful lady in the film. All of them were beautiful ladies, but there's a scene with Taylor Morgan Lewis, who plays Lucinda. there's a full S&M scene in the film. And it was really just interesting to see her interactions with the man who was having the S&M done and her later in the film. I don't want to give away what happens, but there's a nice little twist with her as well. The film runs about 73 minutes, and there are some really creepy scenes. There are some nice extras on the disc as well. Thomas does a fantastic commentary for the film. He also has his short film, The War Master, on here. It was his childhood award-winning first film, but runs about 45 minutes long, shot on VHS back in 1987. Now, considering the transfer from VHS to DVD, it doesn't quite have the same look and feel as Lazarus Apocalypse, but it's still there. It's something that should be watched. It definitely gives you insight into where Thomas started to where he is now. The other thing, and I thought this was a nice surprise, and it's not really a spoiler considering the fact that I've had Thomas on and we've talked about it, is the movie sets up very nicely for the next film in the series, Maryland Zombie Hunter, which I know he's trying to get off the ground and get started, with one of my favorite actresses, Sarah French, in the role of Maryland, and it's pretty cool how he sets all of that up. It really has some intrigue. It really makes you want to find out what's going to happen. I'm interested to see too. While there are things that are hinted, you're not quite fully told yet. You can speculate as to how this leads into Romero's Night of the Living Dead. But I have absolute faith and confidence that Thomas will tie everything together and make this a trilogy well worth watching. Overall, I would certainly give this film, I give it a 4 out of 5, to be perfectly honest with you. This has all the elements of a good zombie film. You have the creep factor, very high marks for staying within the time frame that the movie was shot in. Passable, very capable actors in all the roles. I thought the score of the film fit very well. I thought the visual style of the film fit very well. Nothing ever seemed out of place. This is a great movie to sit down with your friends. If you want to watch a zombie film that actually has content, that sets everything up, especially if you're a fan of the film noir style of filmmaking, Thomas hits on all of these elements. Overall, I give the disc a 7 out of 10. The only thing I would have wished is that Origin had done a little bit more behind-the-scenes features for the film. I would have loved to have seen an interview with Thomas and some of the cast and crew. It would have been great to see an interview with Sarah French and talking about the Marilyn Monroe aspect and how all of that is going to tie in. But overall, a film that needs to be seen. If you're a filmmaker out there and you're wanting to see how it's done, this is the kind of film you need to go out and check. This film is available on Amazon.com and available in Walmart right now. So there's no excuse for you as a genre fan not to go out and pick up a copy of Thomas J. Churchill's Lazarus Apocalypse. And I know Thomas is out there listening. Thomas, we will set something up soon. We will have you back on the podcast to make up for when Blog Talk Radio shit out on us last time, and we will go into more detail on this and your other projects. But make sure to head out and pick up your copy of Lazarus Apocalypse. Coming up in about 5 minutes, we're going to go into our feature interview with the people from Suspension, Jeffery Scott Lando, Kevin Mosley, Sage Brocklebank, and Ellen MacNevin. But before that, we're going to go into our second Metal Massacre Spotlight song for the evening. Once again, the name of the band is Rivers of Nihil. The name of the CD is Monarchy. And the song is Ancestral Eye. I'm back once again. Rivers of Nihil. The name of the song is Monarchy. The name of the song was Ancestral Eye. Make sure to stay tuned. After our feature interview, we will have one more song from this fantastic CD. But now it's time for a feature interview. And right now, I'm being joined by two of our guests. And who do I have the pleasure of having with me right now?
Hi there, this is Jeffery Lando, the director of Suspension, producer and director.
Hi, and this
Jeffrey.
is Ellen MacNevin. I'm one of the actors.
Excellent, and we
The
just
star.
got joined by a third.
Hi, Sage Brocklebank. I'm the producer and with Jeffery Lando and one of the actors as well.
Excellent, guys. Thank you so much for being on. It's been a real honor being able to have and cover all of the 8 films to die for that are a part of After Dark Horrorfest this year. Let's just start from the beginning. Let's start at the top. Jeffrey, I watched the trailer. I really like everything I see. I'm a huge fan of slasher films to begin with. They're right up there with me as far as zombie films go. Kind of talk about for a minute how you came up or how you got to direct this film, and what were some of the interesting aspects of the script that got you involved?
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's a shame Kevin isn't on the call, a screenwriter.
Oh, hi, I'm here.
I believe Kevin just
he
joined
is.
us.
Hi, Kevin Mosley, the screenwriter.
Hey, how you doing?
Suspension.
Good.
So, yeah, I mean, basically this was an idea that was originated by Kevin Mosley, actually, based on a short film that he made as a teenager. But we'd made a successful kind of backwoods horror film called Savage Island, and we're looking for something to follow it up with. And he told me about this story, and it was so simple. You know, slashers have this amazing simplicity to them. There's the predator and the victim, and it's just a guy and a knife, and that simplicity is incredibly appealing from a filmmaker's standpoint. Like, it gives you a really strong, simple place to stand. And we just started building from there. And there was so much potential in the story that he pitched me that I just very quickly got excited about the possibilities. And we really honed it over about a dozen years to get to the point. So he has it's very kind of, it feels familiar, but it's completely different than anything you've seen before.
Now, Kevin, speaking of that, since you wrote the film and you already had a connection to Jeffrey, kind of talk about how you honed the movie, talking together, and why Jeffrey fit the mold as a director. What was it about him that you saw that was like, this is the guy that should direct it?
Well, I mean, doing Savage Island together, I mean, what I found with working with Jeffrey, as a writer, working with a director like Jeffrey, is that, I found that, we were sort of really on the same sort of page as far as sort of how we wanted to develop the script and how much we wanted to work on the script. And I mean, it's an intense process. I mean, it's like our brains sort of meld together, and we just sort of just constantly are at it. Like, we're relentless in story, creating story and character, which is what I'm really interested in horror films. I love a good story, and I love the characterizations in horror. So after going through Savage Island, I think we did about 25 drafts of Savage Island, and I found that it was such a great a learning experience in the rewrite process of developing a script. And I found that, working with Jeffrey, it was sort of definitely an intensity, and he would bring, a lot of stuff to the table, that I may not have thought of or, didn't occur to me, and we would just sort of just keep banging away at the script. I mean, when I pitched him, Suspension was originally called Sitter's Night, back in the day when I, first wrote the first draft. And it was very much a conventional slasher film. I was raised watching all the horror films from the 70s and 80s, and I was a big slasher fan. And, I really, of course, like all other horror movie fans, Halloween, when I saw that, when it came out in 1978, I was, completely riveted. So, I really wanted to do sort of like a traditional slasher, in a way. But then when we started working through the script over the several years of development with the script, it just started to evolve into something a little bit more, complex and interesting for me. So it was just a real process of just constantly reworking the script. And Jeffrey and I would meet together, and he'd be like, well, what about this? And I'd be like, that sounds interesting, and then we'd go off and try it. So it was like a real process of developing the story and the characters in sort of the traditional framework of a slasher film. And then after, we started working the script, another favorite horror movie of mine that stands out was Carrie. So it was really interesting to me to sort of see if we could do like a mashup of Carrie and Halloween, the psychological aspects of Carrie with the slasher sort of, film background with that. So, I love working with Jeffrey. I think, it's a great process, and, we're just really committed to the process.
Now, one of the things, and I certainly mean this as a compliment, so I hope all of you take it this way. Ellen, let me start with you on this one. One of the things, that I noticed watching the trailer, and I'll have to say, forgive me, I had tried to get a screener of this beforehand, and understandably, After Dark has been very tight about handing out screeners, but I've certainly done my research. I've read what few reviews there are online and stuff. But one of the elements that I really draw from this film, maybe it was a point of creativity, was I see a lot of Scream, and I see a lot, of course, you had already mentioned Halloween. Ellen, I see your character, I see it as almost a combination of that Jamie Lee Curtis, Neve Campbell character. For you, when you first read the script and you were processing how you were going to play that character, what was your thought process, and how much did they allow you to make the character your own?
I think I was given quite a bit of room to understand her in my own way, and I really wanted to do justice to the writing and the story and not pull focus, I guess, from the main theme of it, from the fear and from the feelings that were supposed to be brought out in people. So it was a lot of, for me, finding the balance between, like, running away scared all the time that people can sort of fall into sometimes, and the moments of strength and standing up for yourself.
Now, Sage, for you, not only did you act in the film, but you're also a producer, so you wore multiple hats while working on the film. And to bring back up the Scream reference for a moment, when I first saw your character, at first, because the trailer in a way kind of has a light feeling and then it goes very dark, my first thought was the deputy, from Scream. But, as you see it go on, you can tell that the film takes a much more serious tone. For you, not only being an actor but a producer, talk about the development of your character after you read the script, and how much more insight did it give you being behind the scenes as a producer and being an actor as well in the film?
Well, it's cool because I got to come on board the project probably about 3 or 4 months before we were shooting, and Kevin and Jeffrey had hammered out many, many drafts before that, but I was able to kind of see where they were going with it, and obviously as we were scouting locations for the film, some cool stuff came out of it, like we discovered a pig on the farm that Kevin and Jeffrey thought was fantastic, so that definitely had to be part of the story. And Deputy Jacobs is a really interesting police officer, and I don't know if you really get a sense in the trailer, but he's a kind of a sadistic guy who has this voyeuristic mind, I guess you could say, and it was a really, really fantastic role to play and to work on. And I guess the thing about producing a film and acting in it is it gives you kind of the ultimate context of how the story, the whole scope of the story, and where you fit in. So it's a unique point of view to be on set every day and to be around all the other people and kind of understand exactly how you might fit in the puzzle. So that was really, really beneficial. And it was just, a phenomenal experience to be a part of it, everyone.
Now, the casting process.
Hey, I just want to jump in quickly, if I may.
Sure.
Certainly. Talk about these two actors, because they, my approach as a director is I'm very much like I'm just trying to do team building. Like I really see myself as limited in my brain, and I'm really looking for, what are these people going to bring that's going to elevate the project and take it to another level? Like what can they bring that's outside of me?
Yeah.
And so like all three of the people who just spoke, like were awesome in terms of obviously what they provide. Like Kevin is the horror fan. Like he's the one who, like the reason this movie feels so authentic to horror fans and is a movie for horror fans is not because of me, or maybe it's just because of me because I was listening to Kevin. But Kevin is really like at the source of that. And then in terms of Ellen and Sage, like Ellen, we searched long and hard for like the person who could be Emily. And yes, we were thinking about Carrie. Yes, we were thinking about Halloween. Sure, Scream was in the back of our minds, but we were looking for the person who was Emily. And we went to a lot of different people, and it wasn't because we wanted the person who like we had in our brains. We were looking for someone who was just going to kind of blow it away. And when Ellen came in, she completely did that right off the bat, and we're like, wow, this is. And so she was really. It's a very layered role, and you have to see the movie to understand. But there's a lot going on. There's not one layer of reality. There's multiple layers. A lot of it is a lot going on in her mind, and so she had to like kind of hold all that all the time as we're shooting out of sequence. It's a very complex story actually, and we're moving very quickly on a low budget movie. So she was stunning in her ability to kind of hold all that. Yeah. And I really got to the point where I was really trusting her a lot. And I just kind of, my directing got very shorthand with her. I just kind of like make the face at her. And then she would like go give me a quick nod, and boom, there it was. Wow. So, and Sage again, so this was a very tricky role because the deputy, like he completely looks like a kind of beefed up, roided up version of the guy from Scream. And, cops today, like what are, cops back in the day of Scream, well, that was one thing, they were kind of harmless or helpful maybe, right? But cops today are fucking terrifying, because they're like, they're going to shoot you or they're going to tase you or they're going to beat the crap out of you and you hope you're not black or, it's just like, it's an issue. Like a cop pulls you over, you don't know how it's going to go anymore. And so he was able to, how do you do like the funny kind of goofy cop who's actually terrifyingly dangerous at the same time and in a fresh way, so you're not doing like the deputy we've seen a million times. Yeah. And he has this amazing comedy ability. Sage is an extraordinary comic actor who you've seen a bit of his stuff in Psych, but really got to deploy it in suspension, especially this amazing, my favorite scene in the middle of it, where he just kind of takes us on a fantastic journey for 7 minutes. So, I'm thrilled. I mean, these people really made the movie. I just wanted to kind of underline that.
Oh, well, thank you, Jeffrey.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just going to say that it was in the mind of you and Kevin that created this map for us to play in. So, thank you.
Well, and I'm glad that you went into that, because my next question was going to be, what was it about, Sage and Ellen that made you cast them? Let's talk about your other cast members for a moment, because of course, you have your two power leads in Sage and Ellen, but kind of talk about for a minute how you found the rest of your crew and what drew in particular. I wanted to ask you guys real quick about Barry Nerling, who plays Tom in the film, who of course who plays the father, who is, for anyone who's seen the trailer and read about it, knows what his role is in the film. He definitely, one of the things I've noticed about the 8 films to die for so far, and everyone that I've interviewed, is the guy you've had as the main bad guy, the protagonist, whoever is doing the butchering. They've all had very powerful presence on the screen, and you definitely get that from the character of Tom in the trailer. Kind of talk about how you got him involved and the rest of the cast and crew involved, and the dynamic of them playing against Ellen and Sage in the film. Well,
it was a real quest. Again, like every single role, there's no sometimes I direct these movies and they're kind of like, the roles seem kind of generic, interchangeable. You read them, it's like one guy's is Bob, Mick, Dick, they're like random dudes, and then they get killed one by one. That's not what was going on in this movie. Like, people were very, very clearly, they mattered, their personality were very distinct, and they had to be a certain way to kind of build the story. Like, the story was kind of structured in a certain way, so if the person was different, it would shift everything in the story. So we were very, it was a real process of, finding who is got the right stuff. Like, not only who's, a strong enough actor to kind of have us forget we're in a low-budget movie, but, So we had Lisa Ovies, who's a local actress who took on being the casting director for us. And one big question at first was, this movie is set in high school, and are we doing like 20-something, high school, or are we doing real high school? 17,
right.
18-year-old, 19-year-old actors. And of course, as every director wants to do real high school, because it's just like way more oomph when you watch an 18-year-old or 17-year-old something bad happen to them, versus like someone who's in their 20s. You're just kind of like, well, whatever. So there's an innocence, right, and a vulnerability, and so that was the thing that we really fought for. Kevin and I really, and Sage came on board. I mean, even though it created this huge hurdle in terms of cast, because you're dealing with people who haven't accumulated the credits yet. They haven't gotten that big role yet, or maybe they did, but they were a child and they look totally different. So it's a very very difficult place to find people. So it was hard, and of course, as you know, I mean, they say 80% of directing is casting. So to me, like, that was the whole ball game, was like finding the right people. And when I think Sage brought Barry Nerling in, when he walked in with Barry, who's from a stunt background here, and I just saw him, I was like, oh my God, thank God. Because, your movie's only as strong as your antagonist, right? Like, that's an old, well-known saying. You need a really powerful antagonist if you want a powerful movie. And he just walked in the room, and I was like, this is it. Like, we're set. So
well, that happened with Courtney, who plays Teresa as well, who sort of plays Emily's nemesis. So she walked into the room when we were casting one afternoon, and she walked in and she did her thing, and we all sort of looked at each other and went, "Holy shit!" There she is. It was like, boom.
And she was like
same thing with Ellen. She walked in the room, and when I saw Ellen, I was like, "Wow, there's Emily." So we were really, really, lucky with our cast. Amazing talent that we, were able to wrangle together.
Yeah, one of the benefits of working in a place like Vancouver, I guess.
You brought up the whole element of high school and, the believability of the actors and the actresses to pull off, that mindset. I'm 39 years old. I remember how high school was when I went. I have a 14-year-old daughter who is now in high school, and, high school is very different now than when it was when I went to high school. And for you, Ellen, one of the things I wanted to bring up, one of the themes of the film is bullying, and bullying is such a big thing these days. You see it on the news, you see it on Facebook, and the after effects of what happens to these kids that are bullied, or who these bullies are. For you and the actors that you had to go against who were bullying you, how did you guys? What's the word? How do I want to put it? How did you guys develop how the bullying and the things that went on between the two of you would go?
Well, first there had to be a lot of trust, because there is some pretty extreme bullying that goes on. I get my head shoved in a toilet within the first few minutes of the film, and so before somebody is like ripping hair ties out of your hair and like pushing your face into a high school toilet, you kind of have to trust each other to know that it's not going to go too far, and that it's always going to be like safe to some extent. So we had a lot of like, her hand was on the back of my head, but like I was actually doing the movements myself so that I wouldn't get drowned.
Definitely.
Poor Helen.
And that's an interesting aspect, that trust issue with doing the physicality of stunts and things like that. For you guys as directors, director and writer, the element of the bullying is something that hits home with a lot of audiences these days, whether they were a victim of it or their children were. What led to you guys, because it is such a hot topic issue these days, what led to the elements of bullying and making it such a central part of the film?
For me, I grew up in a small town, in the interior of BC, and, it was, I don't know if I've ever sort of experienced, actual bullying, but I definitely experienced sort of like being a bit of an outsider, a little bit. I used to draw gory pictures during class, that's in the movie as well with Ellen's character, but, for me, I think bullying is a real, is a real thing that we're still dealing with, constantly, all the time. And of course, the central theme of Carrie is bullying. Really, it's a girl's story of a girl who's bullied, and she gets revenge on them. So, for me, writing that kind of stuff, I think I definitely have a fair amount of stuff to draw on as far as the sort of the bullying aspects of the film goes. I think we've all been bullied, in some ways, or when we're kids or what have you, by other people, and it's still prevalent. And I think it's a real, thing that still needs to be addressed, and especially in high schools nowadays. So, so for me as a writer, it's important for me to have those themes in the story. So, it is a theme in the film about, the effects of bullying and the consequences of that. So.
Yeah, I don't know how you make a horror film about kind of high school and don't touch on bullying. Like, it's kind of the ultimate horror, I think, for a lot of that and becoming your parents. For a lot of teenagers, I think I remember as we were writing it, because bullying was always a thing. I mean, I was bullied a lot in school, and bullying was also always an element to kill. And we were again digging from Carrie. So bullying was definitely a key part. But it evolved because we spent a dozen years developing the story, right? So when we were first doing this, it's interesting because kids didn't, the cell phone, the phone thing in horror movies has been a big evolution. How now pretty much anyone at any time should have a phone on them that they can call. It used to be the phone's out of order or something, and then you didn't have to worry about the phone and being able to call cops.
That's right.
That whole problem kind of wasn't a thing. But now it's at any time, any person could pick up their phone and call a police officer, right? So it's you have to kind of deal with it. Now, similarly, as we were writing this and developing the script, we're watching cell phones and smartphones kind of penetrating high school, and it occurred to me, this is at one point, that this would become a big means that people would be bullying each other. Now it seems obvious, but at the time it wasn't happening yet. It was I remember us starting to write that into script before it was even a news item. Kids making movies or recording each other in humiliating circumstances and forwarding it around to each other. So it's interesting. There's really been an evolution of what bullying is in high school. And you can literally track that through the drafts, as you went draft after draft, how it's changed and gotten, I think, a lot worse. It's just so much easier to do it anonymously now.
Now, Sage, one of the things I wanted to ask you, they talked about how, you brought Barry in to play, for Tom and everything, and we kind of touched on kind of the qualities that your character has, and it certainly makes your character a character of focus. And I don't want to say a villain per se, but you definitely it gives you a position of power in the film. Now, again, I'm not asking anyone to spoil anything or anything like that, but how did you maintain your character's persona without overshadowing what Barry was doing with his character of Tom?
So there's an element of the film that I don't really want to give away, but there's different points of view, and different characters have different ways of appearing at different points of view, and my character is really so he's a police officer, but he's also a big kid that just really loves the idea of the action, and there's something about him that is kind of larger than life in infatuation with crime and killing and how it all works. And it's a small town that these guys are in, and so it's not, he's one of those police officers that's never really seen much action, so the tiniest thing becomes a big event for him. And I think that his experience of things is not necessarily in reality. Without giving it away, that's about as far as I'll go.
Okay. Now, one of the other interesting things that I really liked about the film was Ellen's character drawing. Some of the pictures that you see that she draws, seem to foreshadow the events that are going to happen. And again, not asking to give away plot points or anything like that, but is there some correlation between what she draws and what actually happens in the film? And for you, Ellen, there are scenes in the film where it looks like you were doing the drawing. Did you do any of the physical drawing yourself for the pictures that we saw?
I didn't do any of the drawing. There was a great artist who was brought on to do the art for it. Devin
Roboshark, yeah.
Yeah.
Devin Roboshark.
And so he was actually there on set some of the days to point to me and be like, draw little lines right there and don't screw anything up. So I was there miming my drawing so I didn't ruin any of his beautiful works. I cannot draw to save my life.
And the drawing element, I just want to jump in on the drawing thing. That was actually a really, again, we went through probably 40 drafts on that script, but the drawing is something that came in very late. It was really in the last, maybe 3 or 4 drafts that suddenly there was this drawing thing. Before then, there was this TV, and they were watching stuff on TV.
Yeah, that's right.
And it just felt, I don't know, there was something a little off about it. It was fine. It would have been fine with the television, but it felt a little bit more passive, and that kind of was very referential to other, which is one reason why it was there. We're referencing, again, Halloween. There's a lot, they're watching horror films during Halloween, and so we were referencing that. But just it was feeling kind of derivative, and then we kind of suddenly hit on this idea of these drawings, and we got very excited. But it was a very late addition. And it's amazing to me, it's, again, the process of screenwriting, how you'll work the hell out of something, and then literally an idea will occur to you much later that'll absolutely become a core part.
Yeah,
it's impossible to imagine the movie without it anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when we sort of landed on the whole idea of Emily, drawing, it really hit me too, because I was like I was saying before, I was that kid in school, drawing gory pictures of all that stuff, and getting caught by the teacher, and then made to feel really, really weird and bad about it. So when we came up with that whole concept, it felt natural for me for sure as a writer, that I could draw on my own experience of that as well. So.
Now, another thing that all the 8 films to Die For have in common is they certainly don't seem to skimp on the blood and gore. And just from what I saw in the trailer, being an effects makeup artist myself, was some of the blood that we got to see in the trailer. Kind of talk for a few minutes about, with it being a slasher film, of course you're going to have your elements of blood and gore and all of the things that go on, with that, but incorporating it in a way that helps tell the story instead of being the story. Kind of talk about the blood and gore in the film, and tell us a little bit about how you got your special effects people, Silver Anderson and Dallas Harvey.
Talk about the gore, Jeffrey?
Talk about the gore. For starters, Dallas is awesome. So Dallas has got a school here. This has been one of my kind of strategies as a low-budget film producer, sometimes to bring in schools to do work where you might otherwise go to professionals. But Dallas has a school here, and he was very, just loves, he's, I guess, available and excited, and he's a real horror fan, like a lot of special effects makeup people are. And I think he got very excited about the idea of being able to do a slasher. A lot of slashers nowadays are kind of reticent to do a lot of the builds the heavy makeup and blood stuff just because of the cost associated and the fact that the budgets are so low. So typically they really skimp on that and, try to do more stuff digitally. And that was something that we were really, again, we're hearkening back to kind of Tom Savini movies. And so we really wanted to do this stuff practically. So it was just we were coming in like honoring sort of the slashers of yore and wanting him to kind of live up to Tom Savini. So who doesn't answer that challenge, right? If you're available and you can do it, you jump in. You jump in it, right? So he did, and he was awesome. And if anything, one of the biggest problems we had is his props were very hard to break. They'd come in and we'd like try to put the axe in the head, and that head was like made of titanium. Like it was insane. So it was that was the challenge. They looked amazing. When Sage as the deputy has his amazing gore sequence in the middle of the movie, that prop that he uses and is pulling organs out of and all this stuff is like completely. They spend I think a couple of weeks on it just building this thing that we completely ripped apart joyously.
That was awesome
on set.
Yeah, it was epic.
Yeah.
Now, Sage, let me. I'm going to ask Sage and Ellen about that. Sage, let me start with you since they brought it up. And again, not to give anything away, but how was that for you? How much do you enjoy working with the blood and gore as an actor? Because I know there are plenty of actors out there who that's the part of filmmaking that they absolutely detest. How do you feel about that kind of work?
Oh, I mean, I love that stuff. Like I've worked on shows where it's all green screen, and in the environment as an actor, you kind of have to create it in your mind, and it's okay. But for me, the ultimate is to get that kind of visceral sensation of what is this like. So when you're doing a horror film and you're touching guts or brains, and you actually get to feel that texture in your hands or on your face or wherever it may be, that's kind of the ultimate sensation, because it really captivates you and pulls you into the story, and then you're submersed in it. You're not even really acting anymore. You're just reacting to your environment. So it's really the ultimate way to explore this, especially this is my first time really doing a slasher film, so to have that experience of being surrounded with this thick, sticky blood and have my hands all in it, it was fantastic.
See, that's the kind of answer I love to hear.
Yeah, I want to say something again about the gore, kind of generally speaking, is I think one of the things is that it was never gore. Like sometimes you make a movie and it's like about the gore, and it's gore for let's get into the gore and let's show people the gore, and it's for people who are into gore. And yeah, I guess we all are in a way, but that wasn't the point. Like in this movie, again, we're trying to sort of update the slasher thing. And one big thing about slashers, and maybe a reason why we haven't seen so much of them lately, is because there's this kind of thing, sex is bad, right? So teenagers are being punished, especially girls who are being, sort of taking risks, sexual risks, or being adventurous, are punished because it's a bad thing, and then, some kind of, killer is going to come and, murder them for their transgression. Well, that kind of doesn't really hold anymore in a lot of ways. But on the other hand, I think sex has become, in a lot of ways, a tool. Like there's a lot of rape. Like we kind of opened our eyes to all this rape and domination, and how sex is sort of poisoned in a way. I think it's no longer this innocent thing in high school, and so for the main character, for her, I think again, like the sex and the killing were kind of seen as one of the same. Like this idea that somehow Emily is afraid of sex, is afraid of the penetration, and so when someone's being stabbed, it's a sexual act. It's the knife is going in. It's terrifying, and it's sort of pleasurable at the same time. And we tried to sort of like look for that visually and sound, like using like all the tools of cinema to sort of cross over, shooting some of those kill scenes a bit like pornographically, but again to sort of like not because like we're going to get high on it, but because it was like a key story theme. And I think that's what makes it work better. That's what makes it really dovetail nicely into the story, because it's an important kind of thematic element. The gore, the violence tied to sex is kind of critical part of the story.
Now, Ellen, for you, what do you think about everything he just said? Because I feel like that's a valid point. There are a lot of journalists out there who say those types of things about horror films, how, sex is basic, or, the murder and gore in horror films is basically a metaphor for sex. What are your thoughts on that, playing your role, and what did you think of the blood and effects in this film?
I think I agree that, like, the killing and the sex are both very visceral things in life, and that in this film there's a lot of bringing them together. Like, the sexual moments in it are never really free from even the emotional violence or hatred that's running through a lot of the characters in the film. And that works vice versa as well. The killing and the violence never really being free from, the killer's pleasure that he's taking in it. He's not killing off people because he feels he has to. There's an enjoyment in it as well. And in terms of, the blood and gore, in the trailer you see, I end up pretty much Carrie style, head to toe, covered in blood. And it's very cold was probably my biggest realization. A lot of the film takes place outside, and we shot in the spring in Canada, and so I basically spent nights being soaking wet, cold, and outside, and I had some of the best showers ever afterwards, warming up and combing mats of blood and dirt out of my hair. So that was a special memory that I'll have forever.
Oh, that takes me back to days of being on set and people just being so pissed off at me afterwards because of all the blood that I poured on them. I remember those days so fondly.
There was a point where, there was versions of the script that were actually much more gorier than what we ended up with. I love writing gore stuff. I love challenging myself to try to come up with different ways of killing people, and so the script actually became, I think, less gory as we went on. And I think that when we were actually looking at, when we were editing, there was some stuff that we actually pulled back on, sort of, because you can like Jeffrey was saying, you can just completely go over the top, and then it just becomes all about the gore. So, and a lot of this, the traditional slashers, they have the money shot and then you cut away. It doesn't sort of linger on into this whole gratuitous sort of, gore sequence, especially, like that. So I think that, the script definitely became less gorier as we went along. I think it, definitely got gory, and then we sort of pulled back, so.
Now, one of the other interesting dynamics I feel, especially since we're talking about the murder and the sex aspect and all of that, is there's definitely the elements of a fractured family. Of course, in the description, so I don't want it to feel like I'm giving anything away, but on the description for the film, Tom is Ellen's father in the movie, and of course she's babysitting her little brother, so there's that whole interesting family dynamic involved with that. Ellen, when you're playing your character and you think about all of those elements combined, what do you feel that says about the family dynamic in the modern day horror film?
I think a lot of it comes in from, no one ever really feels like they have the perfect family, or at least I haven't met anyone per se who really seems like they're, everybody loves their family, but no one has some picturesque perfect family without it being something very, very wrong underneath. But I think this comes into something that's relatable to people because it's taken to the extreme in that Emily's family is completely broken. Her mother is working constantly to try to just keep them afloat. Her brother is mute. He doesn't even speak anymore. Emily's getting bullied at school, and now to top it all off, her father is coming to kill them. So I think it gives people sort of an outlet for anything they might feel about their parents maybe being separated, that it could always be worse.
Now, Jeffrey and Kevin, for you guys, was the family dynamic always going to be a central part of the film? And what do you guys think about the portrayal of the modern family in today's horror films?
Well, I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
I think it's something we developed further. So in the very early drafts, actually, Tom was not the father. Then there was this whole thing of, like, maybe he's the father.
Yeah.
and then we were, like, maybe going to have that be a twist at the end or something, reveal he's the father. And as we kind of kept on developing, and the little boy was, like, someone she was babysitting at first, just like in Halloween, right? And then it's sort of like, and we just sort of started following basic rules of drama, really, which, where if you kind of keep it in the family, it's all strengthened. And as we started sort of following those guidelines, like, what if, yes, he is the father, damn it, the aggressor. Like, what if he is? What does that create? What if the little boy is not just some kid? What if it's her brother? What does that then create? And we started kind of, like, exploring that, and what you have is all of a sudden, like, vastly heightened drama kind of emerges from that. And these are, like, really basic, like, it's kind of like literally Aristotle's rules of drama literally state that as a rule, and we're following, like, old Greek drama rules to kind of discover this. But it literally unfolded a very interesting kind of world for us to work from. And then I think that, again, we're talking about horror films for teenagers today. I think we live in fractured families. I mean, just the nuclear family in and of itself is insufficient. We really should be in sort of these big tribal groups. That's how we evolved, right? So even just a mom, a dad, and 2 kids, that, like, so-called perfect family is already, like, incredibly deficient. And then now you have, like, we really have these subatomic families. So, it just seemed it had to be that way. But what do you want to say, Kevin?
No, I agree. I mean, I think that, when we first started out, it was like, a very traditional sort of slasher film, girl at a house, lonely, babysitting, a kid, and the killer shows up. And then when we actually started to really look and sort of trying to decide really what kind of a story we wanted to tell, and really started to focus on the character of Emily, I think, it sort of sprung from her character in a way, sort of like how can we, tell a story that's interesting about family dynamics a little bit. Going back to Savage Island a little bit, I mean, that really was about 2 families warring on a little island. And I think for me as a writer too, is that's always interested me, the family dynamics, and how that all sort of works. And it just gave us a lot to sort of play with. Having Jeremy be her mute brother, I thought was really interesting, and how they could sort of communicate, and how he's sort of a fan of her as well, and she's very protective of him. And then, having the mom being distant, I think that's very, sort of a running theme today, where the parents are sort of not quite sure what their kids are up to, because they are leading such busy lives, and sort of, the teens are sort of running around, without a lot of supervision or what have you. But so for me, I think that the themes of family and relationships and all that, the dynamics behind all that, I think was very important in telling the story, especially from Emily's point of view.
Yeah, and what are your? Go ahead, please.
You just touched on the little brother. We've just spoken about him a bit. Connor and Owen Fielding, the twins who played that kid, are amazing. Yeah, these kids are like, they could do like backflips, synchronized backflips for you at the age of 6. Like it was like being at Cirque du Soleil. It was like, what the hell are these kids? Who are these people? So
and they were like massive
horror
movie fans too.
See a lot more of them. Yeah, and they loved it. Like I was like all prepared to, Kubrick style, completely hide what the news was about. They didn't ever know what was happening. And no, they didn't care. They wanted to know. And the parents told them, and I was like, okay, well, then go over there and scream. I don't know. Let's just make this movie. So they were fantastic. That's all.
Yeah, they were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Sage, let me get your thoughts on this, too. What did you think of the family dynamic in the film, and what are your thoughts on what the family dynamic has become in the modern-day horror film?
I love it in the film. I love the fact that not only is she isolated from her mom, but her dad's been estranged for 8 years, and I think it's an essential element of Emily's psyche is that she's kind of plagued by this, this incident that happened years ago with her father, and I think it's probably an essential thing in horror film is that it's just as important as what's happening in the film is the backstory that you create as a filmmaker, that, what plight is the character under. And so I think that for us to have Emily with her, this thing that happened years ago with her father and how he's gone postal, and that's kind of caused her to be alienated, because it just takes the bullying element of the film and just raises the stakes, right? Because she's not just a girl who's being bullied. She's a girl who's being bullied and I mean, not really for a good reason, but it's understandable. When her dad did what he did years ago, it makes sense that the whole town has ostracized her. So it really, really puts her in a really precarious spot, and as a filmmaker, is a great place to see her in, right? It's a great area for us to find her. So, yeah, I loved it.
Now, you guys mentioned that the film was shot in Canada, and Sage, I know that you were from, I believe it's Vancouver, if I got my notes correctly. And I've started to notice that Canada has started to have a resurgence in the horror industry. Now, back in the early days, David Cronenberg did a lot of stuff up there. Yeah. The Canadian horror film is coming back. What are your thoughts on your home country becoming a hotbed for horror films again?
Well, a little-known fact, we shot this film. The high school that we used is the old high school where I went to high school, Langley Fine Arts School, and the whole property, that's Emily's property, and that's Alec and Vera's place, was my good friend Brian Anderson's ranch. So it ended up being kind of literally like doing a movie in my backyard where I grew up, and it's really the perfect place to do that kind of a movie. Like, we were shooting in March and April, and it was like cold and it was rainy, and it was there's this big majestic red barn that just looks blood red, and so that's kind of the perfect backdrop for doing that kind of a project. And I think that where the industry is at in Vancouver, because we shoot a lot of stuff, there's a lot of film and television that shoots in Vancouver, but primarily it's a service industry where it's American TV series that are doing that. And in the last 5 or 10 years, there's been this huge resurgence of independent film, and horror is a real good genre that people can kind of get in, and they don't have to make a $5 or $10 million movie to get into the marketplace and sink the teeth in. So I think you're going to see a lot more horror films coming out of Canada in the next 5 or 10 years.
Now, Jeffrey and Kevin, talking about that, the resurgence of horror in Canada, what led to you guys deciding to shoot the film in Canada? What was it about Vancouver in particular that enticed you to shoot there?
Well, we both live in Vancouver. I mean, so that's definitely a big selling point. But yeah, I kind of had an idea that this movie was going to be made in LA. And I was literally moving ahead with that, location scouting and working with a producer down there, and we were really on our way. And Sage kind of put his foot down. He's like, listen, I really want to see if we can do this thing in Vancouver. And I sort of gave him the conditions, and he went and just sort of met them very, amazingly. So it just seemed like the obvious. Now, what in terms of resurgence of horror here, I mean, it was kind of a economic thing. I think the way I first got into it, where I'd sort of spent the 90s making independent films, and the kind of independent films that people's parents want them to make, maybe like dramas and comedies and kind of arty movies that would, on a low budget, didn't have famous people in them. And despite the fact that a lot of them were really great, adorable or nice movies that would do well in festivals, they'd sort of disappear off the map. And so when it came time for me to sort of produce my own movie, not be a cinematographer, but sort of transition to directing or producing, I, kind of elected to go with horror, not just because I really enjoy making horror films, which I do, but all, because what kind of movie can you sell that doesn't have famous people in it, that's done on a low budget, where's there a market for that? And that's definitely in the horror world, right? So that was kind of what pointed me in that direction at first, and then I kind of discovered the joys of filmmaking. And I like to think that Kevin and I, when we did Savage Island a dozen years ago, or 13, whatever it was, 13 years ago, we achieved some kind of success that people did notice, and I think we're kind of pioneers of this new movement, because now there's a lot of people who are making low-budget horror films, and I think they've seen that there are other ways to sort of make a living as an independent filmmaker in Canada. You don't have to just sort of make films that appeal to the cultural boards that say Telefilm, the various funding agencies that are looking for something very, that they could put a circle around and say, this is cultural, and are not horror fans, these people, or maybe there's one in the office who's a horror fan, but that we can make movies for an actual audience that wants these things, and people will watch them, and they'll be excited about them, and there's actually people who love these movies. And I think once you discover, you see your neighbor, you see a friend, or you hear of someone who's doing this, so I'm taking all the credit, is what I'm saying, for the whole Canadian movement.
That's awesome. I mean, Canada, we've been, back in the, into the late 70s, 80s and stuff. I mean, there was a ton of, Canadian horror films that were being made here, like My Bloody Valentine and Happy Birthday to Me and Prom Night and Black Christmas. And, I think Canada's contribution to the horror genre has been pretty strong. We're still making them, but I think we sort of went off the radar there for a little while. But I love that Canadians are making horror films now, and more people are sort of, making sort of more of these Canuck horror films. But, I mean, Savage Island was a lot of fun to make because it was very much a Canadian horror film in a way. It had a lot of themes that were very much sort of Canadian in it. So I love to sort of explore all that kind of stuff. I'm a big fan of Canadian horror films. Ginger Snaps is another one. Our friend, mutual friend of Jeffrey and I, who actually came on board as our props guy, made an independent film recently called Bloody Knuckles, which has done very well in the festival circuit. Yeah, really so there's definitely a handful of people out there who are making horror films in Canada. And we'll continue to do so and sort of put our little stamp on the genre. So
you obviously have to mention the Suska twins today. I mean, there's a lot of people. The
Suska twins, of course, Jen and Sylvia.
Who are people are loving it. I mean, the people react. Once you make a horror film, and you've made other movies, the way people react, your audience reacts to, if you really serve them what they want, they love you so much, it's hard to turn to another audience after that.
We are a very rabid fan base, I will say that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, Ellen,
we're all fans of the genre, too, so.
I wanted to ask Ellen because, unfortunately, IMDb does not have a lot of info about you. Are you from Canada as well? And what were your thoughts on filming in Canada?
Yeah, I was born and raised right in Vancouver, so It was really nice to, I guess, be able to go home to my actual home after shooting and not be in a hotel room where I never feel like I'm really truly secure or at peace, No,
I get that. I've been very fortunate with a lot of the films that I've worked on have been here in North Carolina, so I understand that aspect of being able to go home after a day on the set. Now, we have a couple minutes left, so let me ask you guys this. Before you found out you were going to be part of the After Dark Horrorfest, the 8 Films to Die For, what were your initial thoughts on release and distribution for the film, and what was it like for all of you when you found out that you were going to be part of this great horror fest?
Jeffrey?
Okay, I'll go. Sure. I certainly, the kind of the theatrical release is sort of what you wish for the most as an independent filmmaker. That's kind of, I've made 14 movies now, and they've, all been sold around the world, et cetera, but literally never have I ever actually had a theatrical release. They've been made for TV, made for cable, straight to DVD, this whole world, which for genre, low budget filmmaking is kind of ordinary. And so when we kind of broke out, and I kind of got sick of the sort of movies I was making, and I really wanted to make an ambitious film, not ambitious budget-wise maybe, but ambitious art, in terms of craft. And hell yeah, we're very hopeful that we get a theatrical release in the States, and we're thrilled to be recognized by After Dark and be part of the festival and, get to be shown in theaters, in 11 cities around the U.S., around Halloween. I mean, it's a dream come true. So I was very excited to hear about it, and I'm very thrilled about it, and I'll be down in L.A. to go to the first screenings there, and sort of experience that firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is my first film that I've made as a producer, and so when we were prepping it and getting ready, the idea of having it in the theater seemed like a real pipe dream, just because I know it's such a slim percentage points situation. And so when After Dark picked it up, the idea that that we could potentially go down to the screening and be there with an audience. Like I'm in Toronto right now, and I just saw all of the movies at TIFF, and I got to go see in Midnight Madness screening, where the fans are just so pumped up to see a movie, and they're cheering at the kills, and they're cheering at all the different moments, and it was just fantastic. And so the idea that our film is going to be part of something like that with After Dark and 8 Films to Die For, I think is just awesome. It's a home run for us.
Yeah,
how about for you,
I
Ellen?
agree.
I'm really psyched. Like, this is the first feature film that I've ever done. So, and to see it go so far, and to, I guess, imagine people in theaters that I'm not also in watching our film is really, really exciting.
Now, of course, the festival is playing in the United States, but, you're the first film crew that I've talked to, the first cast and crew, where the film was, shot out of country. What are the plans for showing it in Canada? Of course, you guys mentioned TIFF, but I mean, is there any plans for a theatrical release in Canada?
Yeah, exactly, right? So this is the thing. This has been a bit of our, Kevin and I have suffered from this, is that this is sort of like not really welcome in Canada. So, very successful in England. It played at Fright Fest, Fantas Porto. It played in Rome as part of Fantafest. We're getting this big release, for us, a very big release in the States. And in Canada, it's like a struggle to get anyone. Now, luckily, Whistler Film Festival recognized us and is curating us. But literally, they're the first Canadian festival to have put us down. There's this kind of like rejection.
We were at the Montreal Horror Fest there.
So,
yeah, we were there.
I think we've got to like kind of. Montreal Horror Fest, of course. Yeah, where we won an award. But I think that it's just there's a sort of. I don't know what it is, but I find it very, very hard to achieve the same level of success here in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, we are in talks with a Canadian distribution company, and we should know in the next couple of weeks something about a Canadian theatrical. I'm quite confident that it's going to happen. I don't know if it'll be quite as prominent as 8 Films to Die For, but I think it's going to happen for us.
Well, I'm excited for it. Unfortunately, I found out there will be no place in North Carolina showing them, so I will be watching them all on VOD, and I'm certainly going to contact the companies about doing DVD Blu-ray reviews of the films.
Great.
So I wish you guys all the luck
Awesome.
with all of that, and I really hope it turns out well. I think the film will be very well received both by genre fans and
we're
by
excited.
critics.
Very excited about it.
Yeah,
but
thank
before
you
we go,
for showcasing us. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I feel like it's my duty to do that. At Horror Society and with the Calling Hours Horror Podcast, we try to focus on the independent horror that normally would not get, the media attention that it should. And I definitely feel like there's going to be a lot to look at with this film. Of course, without giving anything away, are there plans for a sequel? Could there be?
I don't know.
Suspension 2.
Suspension 2. I don't know, Jeffrey.
I think it would be a
maybe,
prequel.
maybe not. We'll see.
If we're going to make one, it would probably be a prequel.
A prequel might be.
I think we have other projects up our sleeve that we've also been developing for a while, and I think that like a sequel would look like another production from us that we're quite excited about actually. This time in the haunted house genre, we have something up our sleeve that we've been preparing for quite a while. We want to unleash. So that would be next.
Well,
I think Suspension sort of stands on its own right now. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you guys for being on. But before you go, you guys talk about future projects and stuff. Jeffrey, let me start with you. Of course, we have Suspension, October 16th. After Dark Horrorfest, 8 films to die for, 8 cities across the United States. What can we look forward to for you in the future? And if people want to follow your work, social media, websites, anything like that, what do you want to tell people?
Sure, of course. You can follow me on Twitter, Jeffery Lando, and you can follow the movie at there's like either Suspension Movie, which is on Twitter, or Movie Suspension on Facebook. But I think that like I said, Kevin and I have been developing another haunted house story. Ghost story,
the Beckoning.
The Beckoning that we've been through a lot. We've done a lot of work on it as we do. That we're very excited about, and then there's some other projects that are sort of comic book adaptations that I can't really talk about right now. But I think that it's a great time in filmmaking, where as a filmmaker, sort of the keys to the kingdom have been handed over to the filmmakers. Like you can really. You could really go out there and accomplish a huge amount with very little in the way of resources, because so much of it is just a camera and a laptop.
Very true.
And then so a lot of these kind of high bar, like just the cost of film stock was like death. So all those obstacles have been are gone now, and so it really feels like a wide open horizon. It's a very exciting time.
Kevin, how about for you? Of course, we know about the haunted house project, but what else is in the pipe for you?
I'm actually just finishing up another draft of a film called Puppet Killer, which is a film that Lisa Ovies is doing. She was.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. So I'm I spent yesterday and today in front of the computer pounding away, and tomorrow I'll spend the whole day doing that, and so I'm just sort of finalizing the script with that. Really fun. It's a fun little movie, and I'm excited to get that one moving as well. So it's a slasher film, but it'll be a fun one. And then of course the haunted house one with Jeffrey with a puppet. Yeah. So lots of fun. We're gonna have fun with that one for sure. And we've also got the Saska twins involved with that one as well.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so it should be a good one. So we're excited about it. So we're actually, I think we're intending to shoot start shooting mid-December into probably mid-January. So right now I'm just kind of finishing up the script and then probably maybe put on my art direction hat and help out with some of that. So. That's the nice thing about doing independent films. I get to wear different hats a lot of times. On Suspension, I got to be the production designer as well, so which is pretty cool as a writer to actually be involved in the sort of the visual look of the film as well. So
that was great.
Sage, how about for you?
So I've got a film. Playing another little. I believe I'm waiting for my copy of the script. I got a little bit
it's coming, Sage.
In the film called Real Fiction, which is a Canadian film that's in post right now that will run next year. And then I'm actually studying at the Canadian Film Center in Toronto in the producers' labs. I'm developing a film called Scam, which is about a phone scam operator who scams seniors over the phone, and he picks the wrong old man and has his world turned upside down. So it's like a crime thriller, revenge bit. And I'm developing a TV series, a comedy about a burned up, washed up sci-fi star called Lance Wonderbuck, Fallen Star. Awesome. Based on some of my own life experiences living in Los Angeles and Vancouver. are in the works, and then you never know. I'm also, looking for other things to get involved in. Yeah, and you can find me at Sage Brocklebank on Twitter or sagebrocklebank.com, my website.
Now, Ellen, I know you have Opus 35 and the arrangement coming up. Anything you would like to tell us about those?
Yeah, so Opus 35 is a short film that I shot with, that I acted in with a great group of people, about a group of musicians and their life. It's a much more low-key social drama sort of film. No one dies. And I was just on set yesterday for the TV pilot, The Arrangement. So that's pretty exciting. And I had a great time with a bunch of wonderful, wonderful people. Yeah,
well, guys,
and
again. Oh, go ahead.
I'm on Twitter at Ellen MacNevin.
Guys, again, I want to thank you so much for being on. I'm really looking forward to seeing the film. You guys are always welcome here on the podcast. If you ever have any news you need put up on Horror Society, please let me know, and I'll get it up. And I wish you guys continued success.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure.
Anytime, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we just had director and producer Jeffery Scott Lando, writer Kevin Mosley, producer and actor Sage Brocklebank, and actress Ellen MacNevin, all a part of the film Suspension, which is part of After Dark Horrorfest's 8 Films to Die For, coming out on October 16th, playing in 8 major metropolitan cities in the United States, and hopefully, according to them, some play in Canada. And it should, Canada, if you're listening, play this film. Celebrate your filmmakers. Horror's making such a strong comeback in your country. I want to be reading about the great Canadian horror and see some more great Canadian horror. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to go into our second digital dismemberment review, where we will be covering Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of The Sentinel. But before that, we're going to go into our final Metal Massacre spotlight for the evening. Our final song from Rivers of Nihil this evening comes from the CD Monarchy. The name of the song is Perpetual Growth Machine. And welcome back. Once again, that was Rivers of Nihil off of the CD Monarchy. The name of the song was Perpetual Growth Machine. Make sure to head on over to metalbladerecords.com to find out about their touring schedule, to pick up the new CD and merchandise, and read and listen to all the other great bands that are a part of Metal Blade Records. But now it's time, ladies and gentlemen, once again, for some digital dismemberment.
Digital dismemberment.
And in our final digital dismemberment spotlight for the evening, we are covering Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of The Sentinel. When a beautiful model, Allison Parker, played by Christina Rains, rents an apartment in a gloomy New York brownstone, little does she realize that an unspeakable horror awaits her behind its doors, a mysterious gateway to hell. Allison likes her eccentric new neighbors, so it comes as a shock when she's told that except for a strange old priest, she's the only tenant. Based on Jeffrey Convent's best-selling novel, this contemporary gothic chiller features amazing special makeup effects by the legendary Dick Smith and is an incredible assemblage of stars that includes Chris Sarandon, Ava Gardner, Jose Ferrer, John Carradine, Arthur Kennedy, Eli Wallach, Martin Balsam, Burgess Meredith, Beverly D'Angelo, Deborah Rathen, Jeffrey Orbach, Jeff Goldblum, Tom Berenger, and Christopher Walken. Director Michael Winner comes up with something to terrify everyone in this spine-tingling exercise in supernatural horror. I have to admit, I vaguely remember seeing this movie as a child. Well, as a youngster. I don't want to say child because that really makes it sound wrong. But I did get, I do vaguely remember it. There were a lot of elements in this film that remind me of a lot of some of my other genre favorites. Of course, I'll point out The Beyond straight out the gate in particular. I don't know if All Contacts looked that way back during that time of filmmaking, but that was definitely one of the first parallels that I drew with the film. And to give you a little bit more of an idea, Allison Parker is a model. She does commercials and print work. She winds up moving into this really nice Brooklyn brownstone that's been divided into apartments, and she's engaged to be married, or be married to her boyfriend, who is a lawyer. The house itself has one other tenant who lives on the top floor, and his name is Father Halloran, who's played by John Carradine. And he's a blind priest who spends all of his time sitting at his open window. As Allison is there, she starts to meet other tenants there, including Burgess Meredith and a host of other characters. At one point, there's a large party upstairs. But Allison, she starts to have physical problems. She has trouble sleeping at night, and she even has a flashback to when she attempted to commit suicide when she was younger. She complains to the real estate agent of noises that are being caused by her neighbors, but she's told that the building's only occupied by her and the priest. So, she makes mention of it to her boyfriend. They go through the building. There's nothing there. So Allison and her boyfriend start doing some research and learns that the building is owned by a secret society of excommunicated Catholic priests and is actually a gateway to hell, again, drawing another parallel to Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. The blind priest himself is the guardian who ensures that the demons do not escape from the building. As it's found out that once the priest dies, a new guardian will be needed to guard this gateway. The Society has chosen Allison because of her 2 suicide attempts, and she's told that to pay for the sins of her trying to commit suicide, she would need to be the next Sentinel, and that would be the only way that she's allowed into heaven. There's a lot of strange things that happen in the film. I mentioned the party. There are 2 female neighbors, and it turns out they wind up being sisters, and there's a really strange scene where she goes in to meet them, and one of the sisters sits there and physically masturbates in front of Allison. So there's a lot of strange hedonistic things that go on in this apartment. I mentioned the party, and there's a party for the cat, and it's not long after that party that Allison really starts to have the problems with her insomnia and the weird dreams. Near the end of the film, Allison is confronted by her neighbor, Charles Chazen, and all of the demons. Her boyfriend, Michael, who finds out everything that's going on, is among them, and he is actually killed when he attempts to murder the priest, thinking there's some kind of nefarious plot to kill Allison. Allison is then chased throughout the building by all manners of horrendously disfigured people. She runs all the way to the top, and she's in Father Halloran's room where the demons corner her. Chazen hands her a knife and tries to convince her to commit suicide to avoid all of the torment. Father Halloran and Monsignor Franchino come into the room with a giant gold cross, and they work their way through the demons while they try to stop them from reaching Allison, and they prevent her from committing suicide. At that point, the demons all start to dissipate after she takes the cross from Franchino, and she sits down in his chair. Later on, we're shown a scene where the brownstone is being demolished and is replaced with a new modern apartment complex. The realtor, we see her again, and she's attempting to persuade a young couple to move into one of the apartments. They ask about the neighbors, and Miss Logan explains to them that there are only 2, a violin player and an old blind nun. The nun is Allison, and she is blind just like Father Halloran. And again, when you see the close-up of her, immediately your mind flies to the beyond, and she's sitting in the top-floor apartment. And the movie cuts away. I really enjoy this. It's a little bit more of a slow build horror film. They don't really quite make them like this anymore. A lot more attention to detail and the building of suspense. There certainly are some creepy scenes during the film. In particular, there's a scene where Allison is attacked by her dead father, and she stabs him in the arm. There's a great sequence where the knife comes across his eye and pops his eyeball. She slices his nose off, and she stabs him in the chest. There's a great slit wrist scene with Allison in the film where she's younger, one of her suicide attempts. And again, that's quite visually stunning. Dick Smith did a fantastic job with the makeup effects. They used, one of the things that's talked about in the interviews with assistant director Ralph Singleton is they talked about how they brought in people with deformities and circus freaks for the ending sequence. Talked about how unnerving that was, and it's, Dick Smith being the master that he was, it's kind of hard to differentiate a little bit between what is actual makeup and what are actual suicides, actual deformities. So that really leads to the creep factor. I thought the building was an excellent location as well. Overall, I would give the movie 3.5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it's a little bit on the slow end, but It has an absolutely amazing cast. Like I said, when you just look at, there's a who's who of who is in this film, and I really feel that leads to a lot of historical content with the film. As far as special features go, there's a new 1080p high-definition transfer. There's an audio commentary with actress Christina Rains. There's a new audio commentary with writer-producer Jeffrey Convance, and an audio commentary with director Michael Winner. Of course, I mentioned the interview with assistant director Ralph S. Singleton. There are theatrical trailers, TV spots. There's still galleries with movie stills, press photos, posters, and lobby cards. Excuse me. So there's really a lot on this disc. I like the artwork in particular as well. This does not have there is a flip cover, but it's not really an alternate art. It's just more of an expanded artwork. I was really impressed with the quality of the picture and the sound. Again, having seen this so long ago on TV, there's no real comparison for me to give it to other previous releases, but I will say that the film has an amazing look and quality to it, and it's highly recommended. I would give the disc overall a 7 out of 10. A little hard. Several of the people are no longer alive that were a part of this film. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more archival interviews and things like that. I think that would have been interesting, but overall, a fantastically made film and well worth checking out. Make sure to head on over to shoutfactory.com to pick up your Blu-ray edition of The Sentinel. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think it was another fantastic show this evening. Make sure to join us again this Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we'll be covering another film in the After Dark 8 Films to Die For series. But I want to say thank you to director and producer Jeffery Scott Lando, writer Kevin Mosley, producer-actor Sage Brocklebank, and to actress Ellen MacNevin, all for coming on to talk about Suspension, which will be coming out October 16th as part of the 8 Films to Die For After Dark Horrorfest. You can also catch those films on demand. I want to say thank you to our friends at Scream Factory for sending our Blu-ray copy of The Sentinel. I want to say thank you to Agent Extraordinaire Joe Williamson, and thank you to Thomas J. Churchill for sending along the copy of Lazarus Apocalypse for review. That's available on Amazon.com and available at your big box retailers like Walmart. So head on out and get a copy. Say thank you to our friends at Metal Blade Records for giving us the new Rivers of Nihil Monarchy to listen to. Head on over to metalbladerecords.com to find out all the info and order your copy of that. Also want to say thank you to our great correspondent with the After Dark Horrorfest, Tatiana, for setting up our interview for the evening. So until Friday night, ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, the Head Undertaker, the Dead Man Michael Jones of HorrorSociety.com and Living Dead Magazine, telling you all to rest in peace.